Welcome back to the Business of Defense, sponsored by ASMC on Federal News Network. I'm talking with Don Sedgley, Chief Capability Officer at CBeyond Data and President of Altavia Consulting. CBeyond Data and Altavia work to provide holistic solutions to complex problems for their federal customers by focusing on operationalizing leadership goals and objectives into executable strategies. CBeyond Data and Altavia's success is also rooted in corporate social responsibility, which provides a unique competitive advantage in their company culture. Dawn, I'd like to kind of go back to your kind of personal story here and how you got into this business back in the 90s.
So I was working for a management consulting firm as a part of their strategic initiatives group, and they did, getting ready with their merger, wanted to keep that skill set. So they did ask us to spin out and then come back as a vendor to them to provide that special skill sets that we have. So that's what really started it in the late 90s. And then so from there, that's what happens. And so there we were.
Were you in a leadership management position at the spin-out time, or were you more in a technical financial role?
Yeah, I was I was an SAP financial specialist at the time, so I would have been on implementations leading. However, we were part of the strategic initiatives group. So anytime they had a large customer needing to come in that they wanted to sell SAP or strategic services to, I was a part of that. I was not a partner at that location, but I would have been on the path, so to speak. Right. Yes.
So you were now thrust into this leadership position.
Yes.
At Altavia Consulting, and how did you go about developing the leadership management skills you needed and balancing it with the work that you needed to do to create business for the consultancy?
Yeah, I think what ended up happening, if you're in an IT environment and you are working with, in a commercial world especially with SAP in the 90s, you were dealing with a lot of different cultures, because you were large scale projects where you had a lot of different consultants on there from different countries, et cetera. So you were already in a position where you needed to run a team, and you had to have that leadership type of skill. You had to get used to working with multiple cultures and how do you accommodate different technical versus non-technical. So you take that and then you start to continue to grow. And so it was over time, Also, they were always taking a bunch of different types of classes, like learning how to go do org change management, because as you're growing as your projects are growing, you have to take on more of those activities. You can't just be the technical SMEs, right, or the financial SMEs. You have to learn how do you do, project management, how do you do change management, et cetera. And so it was a slow growth pattern over that. We were conservative and managed our growth appropriately. There were the 3 partners originally, and then before we merged. And so we always made sure that we could grow with quality, so we didn't take everything that was possibly there. That allowed us to continually be leaders before we were going to fail necessarily.
Were there critical lessons along the way?
100%. I think one of the main things to recognize is everyone is very different. Being able to recognize other people's skill sets, being able to help other people recognize their skill sets, not thinking that every person has to be on a technical path or a project management path. So there are a lot of lessons that had more to do with how do you build out a culture of a firm where people feel like they can plug into it, that they have value even though they don't look like the next person or come from the same background as the next person, and then continue to mature that and protect that as the company continues to grow.
Yeah, what makes the company culture of Altavia unique in your view?
I think you treat one another as if you're not just there for the job, you're not just there for that project that you're implementing. We're in large scale IT businesses, right? And there's a lot of different competitors that you can be a part of, or you can be an independent consultant. There are groups of people who want to feel like they're a part of a network. They want to feel like somebody's looking out for them. They want to know that you play together, you work hard, you have the mantras like leave no man behind, even if you're not the person doing the job. Go get them coffee if you can't help them do their deliverable and they're in a crunch time. Always trying to make sure that people don't overwork themselves. You'll have those overachievers who like to work 60-hour weeks, but they'll burn out. So those are the things that you have to actually institutionalize into your business. That's where CBON Data and Altavia had a very similar culture, and that's why we were able to like merge very easily, is that we had like-kind mindset when it came to being servant-oriented on projects with our customers, with each other as a part of our culture, but then try to maintain that ongoing. So
now this avoiding burnout and not working too hard, does that apply to you as well?
no. When you're the leader, you end up, you end up working a lot of different hours.
Right.
But so that's where you have to manage your growth appropriately, right? As you get larger as a company, you have to have that right infrastructure in place. Otherwise, you take on the hit. But yeah, the doctor is his own worst patient, as I said earlier. So yes,
Now, Altavia was also involved in what we call today corporate social responsibility. Before it was really even a term. You were involved in this 15, 20 years ago. Can you talk a little bit about how that came about and why that's important to the company and the company culture?
Yeah, I think so. In the late 90s, when we were doing a lot of the large-scale ERP implementations, and you're working on global projects, being a part of that strategic initiative group, we were actually sent to the customer that had a problem, right? When you're doing that in a lot of these locations, a lot of these global companies, they have plants or manufacturing sites everywhere else in the world. And you very quickly learn how blessed we really are in this country, because 75% of the population, or whatever the number is now, don't have what we have. And I was being driven to locations where I had to have bodyguards, you're burning trash, you're on slums.
Right.
And we thought, well, most of us don't have the opportunity to go see that. We might do Habitat for Humanity, which is awesome, but we don't really get to see how the rest of the world lives. So we made it intentionally a part of that, so that people could see how that works. And so we made it to where we did a service project, every year, one in the U.S., one outside of the United States. We found that it helped people bond. You allow them to bring a spouse. A lot of recruiting came out of it, but that way people could actually learn more about themselves, others in the company, and then also provide, a service back. And they liked that they were given that option versus having to figure out how to do it on their own.
Right. No, that's really great. It sounds like some companies have a statement on corporate social responsibility, but you really have action behind your statement. So that's really great. You're also operating in an industry that's, let's be frank, dominated by males, and you've been able to succeed now for well over 2 decades in this industry. Can you talk a little bit about that? What was that like, and how were you able to navigate that and grow your business to land where you are today?
Yeah, I think it's a very, yes, we're in a male-dominated. I have, over time, I learned very early in my career that the world isn't about fairness, especially working in other countries, and you can see the poverty, but the world isn't really about fairness, and I couldn't have a victim mentality of, well, I'm just as, equal or qualified. And I also had to learn very early that it isn't about my gender or not. In some cases, they don't like me because I sound Southern, but I have a Northern sense of humor because, I worked in other cultures. I worked in Asia. So I learned pretty early that someone can always find a reason to, not recognize your skill set. So the way that I came about that was just to say, okay, then this is what I bring to the table. Always do very good work. Always be the best in what you do, and that will be what's recognized. And if not, then not. And that's a reality. So never have a victim mindset. Never be about it's not fair. Just always be about, did I do the most I could? Did I achieve an objective for the customer? And then you'll be okay, right? We are a DOD. I don't have a military background. I'm not on my 3rd career where I was military, civilian, and now a contractor. But over time, just focusing on providing that skill set and that service and doing it well and always being honest, always say what you mean, do what you mean. And then you'll be, your actions will win out over anyone's perception of who you are or what they think,
right.
Oh,
that's great. I'm going to have to write that down, a Southern accent and a Northern sense of humor.
It gets me in trouble quite a bit, actually.
So what's next for Altavia Consulting as a part of CBeyond Data?
Yeah, so now we're leveraging across the firm. We've merged, so the bulk of the back office merger is almost completed. Looking at filling out a few other competencies that we would like to add into our tool belt, so to speak. So looking at some acquisitions, back on track for looking at the acquisitions we were looking at originally, and making sure that we can always provide strategies that are operational for our customers.
Right.
We find that there are a lot of people who are very good at coming up with strategies or very good at operational side, but we want to focus on being able to come up with strategies that are executable as well. So that requires you to have strategic management all the way down to the sharp data scientists. So that's what we're looking at, continuing to fill out in our portfolio.
Great. Well, Dawn, I can't thank you enough. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but I can't thank you enough for being here today and sharing your insights about the defense industry, what it took to grow Altavia Consulting, and your path through that, and also, talking a little bit about what's next for the industry and for CBeyond Data. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank today's guest, Dawn Sedgley, Chief Capability Officer at CBeyond Data and President of Altavia Consulting, for her insights into CBeyond Data and Altavia's business structure, evolving capability set, unique company culture, and what it takes for a company to succeed in the long term in the highly competitive government contracting environment. Watch The Business of Defense again next month, where we bring you inside the companies working to drive transformation in the defense sector, to hear directly from their business leaders and to understand how they create value for their companies and their customers. I am Rich Brady, CEO of the American Society of Military Comptrollers, and I thank you again for joining us. You are listening to Federal News Network. For more on this discussion, visit federalnewsnetwork.com and search ASMC.